Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Rangers' 4-game winning streak is snapped. They lose to the Los Angeles Kings by a final score of 4-1 at Madison Square Garden in the return of Artemi Panarin. So pretty quick return for Panarin, who was traded, what was it, a little more than a month ago, I guess, maybe a month and a couple of weeks. And so Panarin, got a nice ovation after the first TV timeout. They did a video tribute for him. And look, you'd expect that he, did get, more ovation, no boos or anything like that, which, I agree with. Like, booing him wouldn't have made sense, given his on ice performance. Um, and he had been with the Rangers since the start of the 1920 season. So, Panarin, again, we spoke about this a lot when he was dealt, but will go down as one of the most prolific offensive, performers in Ranger history, and really one of the best free agent signings that you'll see, especially for a team that for a long time brought in big superstars and they didn't perform. Artemi Panarin, despite, shortcomings, Panarin certainly did deliver as much as he could for the contract that he had. But in this game, he gets a secondary assist on the first King goal. Wasn't really a big factor. You would think, and one of the goals was an empty net goal. But yeah, and this was with, and maybe it was part of the reason, Adrian Kempe was a late scratch for the Kings. I believe it was a lower body injury, so that line wasn't quite at full strength. It had been, I believe, Panarin, Kopitar, and Kempe, but instead I think it was Matthew Joseph, which is a big downgrade, took the spot of Kempe. But yeah, Panarin had some opportunities, but the Kings kind of won, even though, again, Panarin didn't do a whole lot. But for the Rangers, look, this was kind of bound to happen. And look, I'll be the first to admit, I was surprised. The fact the Rangers won against Winnipeg and Minnesota, both in regulation. Now, I know the Minnesota game, they were outshot severely, but I still give the Rangers a bit of credit for winning that game and kind of really playing well the first half of that game. So it's not to say, oh, like, I just have an amazing feel for when things are going to happen. But this one was, to me, obviously, look, you have to acknowledge that, look, obviously, Kempe being out doesn't help the Kings, but the Kings are very desperate. They're coming off a loss to the Devils. It is Panarin's return, but whatever. That, I'm not going to make a big deal about that. But the Rangers, with the winning streak, they were due to lose. First came back from a little bit of a trip. It just kind of, to me, had all the makings of a loss. However, I also acknowledge, look, with the way the Rangers were playing, I can't count against them either, right? So it's easy to kind of look back and say, oh, it was an obvious loss, because who knows? We could have gone. We could have been discussing this episode where, the Rangers come, they come back, it goes to overtime, and then at that point, anything can happen. But the Rangers really had a poor second period, which we'll discuss. That was the difference in this game. And it's interesting. It was really a couple of individual bad plays. And then it was more the fact that after they allowed the goals, the Kings just sort of took the play of the Rangers, right? So I wouldn't call it one of those things where, oh, you felt it coming. It was more that the Rangers didn't have a response until the third period. The Kings outshot the Rangers 16-3 in the second. Third period, Rangers outshot the Kings 13-2. So I thought the Rangers actually played a pretty solid first period, and they did, give it a good shot in the third. But yeah, the second period was really the difference here in many different ways. The Ranger lineup was the same as it had been last game. So in other words, Brodzinski and Parsonen were your forward healthy scratches, and Vincent Iorio was your defensive healthy scratch. As far as that goes, now that they lost, I would think that Iorio would go back in the lineup next game. Not to say that Vakanainen was in any way, I actually thought he was all right in this game. It wasn't his fault why they lost. And I could be wrong, but maybe because they had a winning streak. I just think you want to be in evaluation mode. Not that I think Iorio is going to be anything great, but I'm just curious to see that. Whereas on the Brodzinski Parsonen front, I'd be more likely to think that would say the same. The only one that maybe, and I doubt it, like maybe a Taylor Radish could be a healthy scratch, but again, I wouldn't count on that. I think he's likely to be in there. So again, same forward lines, aka Adam Edstrom as the fourth line center. Speaking of Edstrom, excuse me, I didn't think that Edstrom played all that well in this game. I thought against Minnesota in what was not a whole lot of ice time, I thought he actually looked pretty good. Didn't feel that way in this game. And maybe, look, was it because he was playing center? I'm not sure, right? I'm just saying, simply put, watching him, he did not play that well. But this was more of an issue of just more of the top players not generating a whole lot to me, right? The Zibanejad line, the last couple games hasn't done a whole lot. The Trocheck line, again, with Miller back, hasn't really, done much. And so, yeah, that's where it really comes down to, where I just felt like more of a top six situation. But there were some good things as well in this game. Look, I don't think the Rangers, got totally bludgeoned. I mean, a little bit in the second period, sure, but the goalie matchup here, Igor Shesterkin did get the start, right? I wasn't totally sure if maybe they would consider Quick against his former team. There was a nice embrace at the end of the game. Um, there was a handshake between the Rangers and Anze Kopitar. Kopitar is retiring at the end of the season. This was his last game at Madison Square Garden. He has been, he's an easy Hall of Famer. He has been a regular in this league since the 06-07 season. So, coming in on 20 seasons, impressive stuff. A couple of Stanley Cup championships for him, one against the Rangers, unfortunately, but he's hanging him up after the season. And so, gets a win in his last game at Madison Square Garden. But, what it tells you next game is, we knew this, is it's going to be a split between Shesterkin and Quick. And we'll discuss, I'll give some predictions. I got to be honest, it's a bit of a toss up as far as which goalie will be in net for the Devils and Blue Jackets game coming up here. But Darcy Kuemper, thought he had a good game. Kuemper, right? Like, didn't face a ton of shots, but made some pretty high quality ones when the game was kind of hanging the balance. So it was a strong game from Kuemper. And look, this one early on was really a situation where it was low event. And that's been the case for a lot of range games, especially Madison Square Garden, where the first period, the shot counts are lower, a little bit more of an emphasis on defense. And the Rangers get the first power play. So it's actually Byfield tripping Lafreniere, the first two picks in the 2020 draft, Lafreniere being number one, Byfield number two. But the Ranger power play doesn't really do much of anything there. And again, JT Miller on that number one unit, don't agree with it. I think that they'd be a little more successful with Perreault on there. That's just me. It seems a bit stagnant with Miller on there, a little bit more stationary, a little bit slower, and not a great looking power play for the Rangers. And then what happens is there's a couple of consecutive icings for the Rangers. One by Matthew Robertson, which was probably a bit unnecessary on his part, where he may have had a little bit more time to maybe skate it out, but kind of rimmed it around the boards, icing. And then Lafreniere goes backhand and just puts a little bit too much on it, icing as well. So the Zibanejad line plus Robertson and Schneider were on there for a while. And Kopitar wins the faceoff. It goes to Panarin, passes it back to Mikey Anderson, then to the right point, Drew Doughty, and just a lot of traffic in front, and Doughty takes a wrist shot and scores. I don't think Igor saw it. It's Doughty's fifth goal from Anderson and Panarin. So Panarin gets on the score sheet at 13:29 of the first period. The Kings take a 1-0 lead, and that's the score they lead by at the end of the first. Again, though, I thought the Rangers were fine. Maybe they didn't generate a whole lot, but I came away from that period thinking, yeah, the Rangers, look, the score could have been tied. The Rangers could have been winning. Definitely. I think in the first period, actually, Noah Laba, he specifically comes to mind. He had a really good chance that ends up, I think it was Alex Turcotte. Yeah. Turcotte, I think, was like in the net. Like, he was kind of in the net area, and it goes off of him. Laba had an open net, and Kuemper really wasn't able to get back, but it hits Turcotte and stays out. The Rangers, yeah, there was a couple of really good chances for them that didn't go into the net. Second period, here is where there's a bad stretch. And look, I don't think the first 4 minutes the Rangers were necessarily playing poorly, but it all kind of happens at once. Mikey Anderson, so Drew Doughty's defensive partner, Anderson scores his fourth goal of the season on a goal that really can't happen. He was close in from LaFerriere and Byfield at 4:31. So here's what happens. Edstrom gets called for a delayed penalty, right? So delayed penalty on Edstrom. Kings get an extra attacker. And let me see. Did the extra attacker actually play a role here? I don't even know that it necessarily did. I think when the goal was scored, I think there might have been 5 King skaters on. But here's the point. A bad job by a couple of Rangers, really 3 of them for different reasons. Edstrom, again, takes the penalty, and he was looking to get off the ice. Laba breaks his stick. He goes off, and Radish as well. I have no idea what they were thinking about because it led to it was like a 4-on-2, almost 5-on-2 chance for the Kings. Lava, I guess I can understand as his stick broke, but still not a great decision. I don't know what Taylor Radish was thinking. Now, technically, Radish was the closest to the bench, but he wasn't that close. He was the closest, but he was still more towards the other side of the ice. So just a poor job by them. Edstrom ends up kind of taking a tumble, which again turns that into a worse situation. So Gavrikov and Fox the only ones back. And it's just an easy play. It's a shot by LaFerriere and nothing Shesterkin could do. Easy rebound by Anderson. So again, a really bad change there. We've seen that when the Rangers have struggled this year. You've seen some of those bad changes. Happened more earlier in the season, but again, that's a bad job of the forwards there. And they put Trocheck and Miller in an impossible situation going onto the ice, replacing Radish and Laba. So 2-0. But speaking of Trocheck, and again, keep on saying that word again, Trocheck takes a stick infraction penalty. At 4:48, he high sticks Quinton Byfield. Trocheck, he just takes a lot of penalties. That's all I can say, right? And a lot of it is, hooks and trips and high stickings. I know he plays that style where he's going to, kind of toe the line, but it's just something that I noticed really all year long. But again, it's not like he hasn't done in years past. And so 28 seconds after the Mikey Anderson goal, Alex LaFerriere scores in the power play. 17th goal of the season from Kopitar and Byfield. So at that point, a couple of assists for Byfield. At that point, a couple of points for LaFerriere. He'd actually get a 3rd point later on in the empty net goal scored by Trevor Moore. But this was one where, a face-off win by Kopitar. Panarin ends up with the puck on a stick. He doesn't get an assist, though. He passes it down low to LaFerriere, gets to Kopitar, takes a shot, and then LaFerriere does a nice job with the puck in the air, bats it in. So, impressive job by him there. And it makes it 3-0 Kings. And the Kings just kind of had it the rest of the period. Rangers didn't really have much pushback. And at 9:13, Matthew Robertson hooks Jared Wright. We'll say this one, pretty weak call. I don't think Robertson actually hooked him. And I think this was where Shesterkin made a bunch of good saves. It could have been 4-0. They kill it off, stays 3-0, and that's the score going to the third. And look, we've seen the Rangers do well in third periods since the Olympic break when they've been trailing. And at 1:15, LaFerriere boards Matthew Robertson, and the Rangers score on the power play. Now, again, the Ranger power play has been very good. Post Panarin, it's been, it goes 1 for 2 in this game. With Fox back, especially, it's done a nice job. And look, hey, credit where it's due. Even though he didn't have anything to do with this one, JT Miller on the number 1 power play unit. They do score here. It's Trocheck, his 14th goal of the season from Fox and Zibanejad at 2:29. And yeah, just, good offensive zone possession for the Rangers, passing it around. It goes from Zibanejad to Fox at the top. And it's a wrist shot that he sifts through, and Trocheck is able to get a stick on it, tips it in past Kemper. So the Rangers don't get shut out. It's 3-1. And from there, the Rangers really did have some opportunities. But the Kings were able to stay afloat, keep the score at 2. I think that was important, right? If the Rangers could cut it to 1, then it kind of becomes a matter of time with the way things have been going with the Rangers. The fact that it stayed 3-1, the fact that they got to the goalie pull with it still 3-1, despite the Rangers out shooting the Kings severely in the third, the Kings get an empty net goal at 18-12. It would be a situation where the Kings just kind of win the board battle. Gabe Perreault is unable to maintain the puck. LaFerriere banks it off the board to Trevor Moore. He, gets past JT Miller a little bit, has an easy angle at it, and Moore scores into the empty net. Ninth goal of the season from LaFerriere, 3-point night for LaFerriere. 18-12 is the goal in the third. Kings win, final score 4-1. So Kings won both games against the Rangers. They played January 20th, and that's when things were not looking so good. That was post-letter for the Rangers. They lost that game 4-3. They lose this one 4-1. And so the Rangers' 4-game winning streak ends. They drop to 28, 31, and 8 on the season, 9, 16, and 6 at home. And look, the Rangers, I think that Vancouver, of course, it's done as far as the number one, before lottery. The Rangers are actually, which is crazy, as bad as the Rangers have been. To show you how bad the Canucks have been, the Rangers are 16 points ahead of the Canucks. That's just insane. But I'm at a point now where with the Flames, I know there's 15 games left, and it's only a 5-point deficit, but I've almost conceded at this point, especially with that win the Rangers had against the Flames, that's kind of done with. I'm still holding out some hope for the Blackhawks, in part because the Rangers play head-to-head with the Blackhawks in about a week's time, maybe a week and a half or so. So, look, it's important for the Rangers to lose games like they did against the Kings here, and teams to look out for: the Blues, Winnipeg, Nashville. Like I said, Chicago. I think it seemed like Toronto is going to be important. And another one is the New Jersey Devils, who the Devils are coming off of a win, an overtime win against the Bruins. And this will be the first Madison Square Garden game of the season against the Devils, which is crazy, on March 18th. But we'll see. I could see the Rangers winning this one due to the fact they're coming off of a not-so-great game against the Kings. Devils are coming off a win, and the last time they played, which is not long ago, in New Jersey, the Devils won. So my initial inclination is the Rangers right man. However, the Devils do have a lot of firepower, right? Even though they're not going to make the playoffs, it's not like a Leaf situation where Austin Matthews is hurt and it all kind of looks bleak. Devils, they do, it seems like they give up a lot of goals, but again, they are a team that I think, can give you some problems with, some of the top end talent that they do have. So we'll see what happens. And then the Rangers go to Columbus the next night. Now, that one I think is going to be tricky, given that Columbus, the Rangers only have one win this year on the second of a back-to-back, and it was that recent win against Calgary at home. So I'm more likely to see the Rangers beating the Devils and then maybe losing to Columbus. Just my early kind of thoughts on it, but we'll see. Hoping they lose both. And the Devils are important because they are, close in the standings. The Rangers have another game with the Devils later in the month at Madison Square Garden. The difference between the Rangers and Devils currently is 6 points, same games. So, hey, if the Rangers were to win both of those, let's even say in regulation, that becomes a 2-point difference. So, the last thing you want is the Devils to somehow getting a better draft pick than the Rangers. But all to say, I think that this isn't an obvious one due to Igor having played a good amount lately, but my hunch is that they go with Shesterkin at home against the Devils on Wednesday and Quick against Columbus on Thursday. That's my leaning. It'll be a split, of course. It won't be 2 games for Igor. They will go with Quick. And yeah, I think we see Shesterkin in the home game on the first night, and then they go to Quick in Columbus, but it could go the other way as well. But in summary, Artemi Panarin returns to Madison Square Garden, does get an assist, and his team, the Los Angeles Kings, do get the win. 4-1 final. Rangers' 4-game win streak is snapped, and Panarin goes home a winner. And now the Rangers will continue their homestand against the New Jersey Devils Wednesday night, and then they will go to Columbus Thursday night.